Welcome to Kamiak Butte, an examination. My name is Tolan Blasco, and this project is a final culminating project in the class SOE 300 taught by Dr. William Schlosser, Washington State University in the fall of 2019. As one makes their way from Seattle to the Palouse, they notice many geographical changes. First, leaving skyscrapers in exchange for trees and breathtaking mountains. Then, heading downhill, the trees become sparser and sparser, until a glimpse of the expansive gorge comes into view. Finally, those familiar wheat fields begin to take form, along with rolling hills, highly varying in size and shape. Among those stick out Steptoe and Kamiak Butte, leaving us wondering how this land came to be and what could have formed such unique geological conditions. Before we can understand the events that formed our Palouse landscape and what makes Kamiak Butte distinct, we must journey further back into time and look at where this land came from in the first place. About 200 million years ago, all terrestrial land was locked together as a supercontinent known as Pangaea. Through a process called continental drift, Pangaea split and spread apart to form the arrangement of continents that we know today. Continental drift was first proposed by Alfred Wegener, who found fossil evidence that continents that are not currently connected once were. In the 1950s, once technology was available to survey the sea floor, scientists discovered that continental drift was possible because of sea floor spreading and subduction. Seafloor spreading is where mid-ocean volcanoes make seafloor material and spread it out. Subduction is where the dense seafloor oceanic crust forms a trench by diving under the less dense continental crust. The oceanic crust melts back into the mantle. These processes explained Wegener's continental drift and are known today as plate tectonics. Driving from Seattle to the Palouse is easier today than it once was. 55 million years ago, you would have needed a boat to make this trip, and once you arrived in Pullman, you would be able to relax in a beach chair while enjoying a coastal sunset. However, through millions of years of subduction of the Farallon Plate, which pushed oceanic terrain known as Silesia into the mainland, the continental coast expanded westward. Farther offshore, the Juan de Fuca Plate also started the subduction process, creating a range of volcanic activity that grew from north to south, forming the Cascade Arc. Eventually, this volcanic activity led to the flood basalts 17 million years ago. Vents moved rapidly northward and triggered over 300 giant lava flows, larger than those seen in Hawaii and Iceland. Known as the Columbia River flood basalts, they covered almost all the geographic features of our area in lava rock up to 2 miles thick. Some places, however, were able to keep their head above the lava. These places today have a unique geographic makeup. One of these places is Kamiak Butte. The Columbia River flood basalts was not the only flood our area has experienced. In the last ice age, ice covered many parts of North Washington, Idaho, and Montana, and had blocked river flow to form a massive lake in the Montana area known as Glacial Lake Missoula. It was a similar size to that of Lake Erie today. The melting glacier and blocking of outflows from ice dams caused the water level of the lake to rise rapidly. The water level eventually rose to a point where it floated the ice dams, causing massive exiting of the water and traveled towards the west coast at 600 to 750 million cubic feet per second. This massive flood, along with relatively smaller floods before and after, changed the topography of our landscape drastically. Surrounded by a landscape shaped by lava and fire, Kamiak Butte stands out as an oasis of sorts. The densely forested hill interrupts the flowing fields of wheat and grass. Kamiak Butte allows us to view the landscaping events through a geological perspective. Below the butte, we see the layer of basalt from the lava floods. Above that, we see the lush soil brought over from Montana and Idaho during the glacial flood. And finally, on top, we see the original seafloor layer, pushed up when the Silesia formed the lands west of the Palouse. These layers help paint a picture for us to view today of the events, their effects on plants, animals, and land, and how it came to be what we now know. Weather is the day-to-day condition of the atmosphere, varying from minutes to weeks. While most times, climate is viewed as the combination of all this weather within a span of 30 years. A macroclimate is a general climate scaled to a large region of a continent. The state of Washington lies within two macroclimates, which are the marine oceanic macroclimate and the marine modified continental macroclimate. Kamiak Butte is set within the marine modified continental macroclimate, which is characterized by cold winters, hot and dry summers, and a high winter precipitation rate. Microclimates range in size, but are generally classified as the climate of a small area in a subregion. Kamiak Butte has many microclimates because it contains a variety of different landscapes. Differing tree sizes, mixed brush, man-made trails, and farmland to name a few, all contain different microclimates. It stands out from the rest of the Palouse because of the forest, giving it an oasis-like feel while you are driving by. Examining the microclimates of a forest gives us a better understanding of what the microclimates of Kamiak Butte Forest are. Light, humidity, temperature, and ultraviolet penetration can influence microclimates and organisms that find their niches in these microclimates. Understanding factors that influence microclimate can be helped by viewing the figure below. This figure represents the influences on microclimate concurrent to the north aspect of Kamiak Butte. As previously stated, Kamiak Butte lies within the marine modified continental macroclimate and has many microclimates. However, many other factors influencing the climate of Kamiak Butte are at play. Air masses are large bodies of air that contain similar temperatures and moisture levels. They significantly affect weather and climate and are shown to cover hundreds of square miles. Kamiak Butte is affected by the marine polar air masses. MP air masses start as continental polar air masses, but are changed by moving over the ocean surfaces, adding moisture and heat to the mass. Pacific marine polar air masses hit the west coast of North America, affecting the climate from there towards the westward reaches of the Midwest. Washington State is covered with diverse topography as well. The greatest degree of climate-influenced topography is caused by mountains. One major aspect of the mountainous topographical effect on climate is the rain shadow effect. The rain shadow effect can be seen when viewing the state of Washington. The Cascade Mountain Range runs down the relative center of the state, dividing it in two. As the marine polar air masses cross the state of Washington, it begins to cool down and lift to the higher altitudes of the Cascades. This rise leads to the condensation of the moisture and mass precipitation. After the precipitation, as the air mass summits the Cascades and begins to descend, the air warms, which allows it to hold more precipitation. It will be able to hold that until the rise of the Rocky Mountains in North Idaho causes another rain shadow. This is illustrated here in the figure below, which is a rough depiction of the rain shadow effect of the Cascade Mountain Range in Washington State. Continentality is another climate factor, quantified on a scale from 0 to 10. 10 being the farthest point from the ocean and 0 being the coast. Kamiak Butte sits right around a 3 on the continentality spectrum. The main differences between Kamiak Butte and the western side of Washington State can be seen in temperature. Oceans have a higher heat capacity than land. Therefore, the ocean can absorb much more heat and solar radiation in a day, taking some pressure off the land nearby. This leads to moderate, low, and high temperatures, whereas Kamiak Butte does not benefit from this. Kamiak Butte has temperatures that are high in the summer and low in the winter, compared to the lower continentality ranges, because the land must absorb the heat. In the last 30 years, the average temperature of Kamiak Butte has ranged from 25 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter to 86 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer. Stark dips down to 11 degrees and are up to 95 on record as well. The hot season ranges from June to September, while the cold season lasts from November to February. The wet season lasts from October to June, which correlates with the winter description of the macroclimate. The dry season lasts from July to September. This weather sets the tone for the climate. as the snow in the winter leads to moisture in the ground, along with the rays of sun in the hot summer, affecting the landscape differently depending on the forest cover of the specific area being examined. All of these factors are what make Kamiak Butte a unique area to examine, as well as understanding the complexities of the climate. A biome is a distinct biological community, plants and animals with common attributes, that covers a large area. Biomes are influenced by specific climates. Many scientists classify biomes differently. However, today we will focus on the North American terrestrial biomes, which are divided into 14 sections. In the state of Washington, we experience 3 of these biomes: the Pacific Coastal Evergreen Forest biome, the Western Interior Evergreen Forest biome, and the Western Interior Shrub Steppe and Woodland biome, which for the purposes of our video today we will call the WISSW biome. Kamiak Butte is a good example of the WISSW biome. The WISSW biome is characterized by the marine-modified continental macroclimate. Sparse tree layers are usually spread out with an abundant layer of shrubs and grasses, making up most of the landscape. Anthropogenic influences have greatly influenced a transition in the WISSW biome of the Palouse, mainly farming and grazing practices. These changes are irreversible, but with new laws and practices the negative effects are decreasing. Where one used to view layers of saltbush, sagebrush, and elevated woodland, now lie small sections of original perennial grasslands, large sections of non-native grasses, and agriculture, with very limited woodlands. Kamiak Butte is no exception to the human influences on the WISSW biome, as depicted in the figure below. The north and south aspects of the Kamiak Butte are very different ecologically. The north aspect emphasizes the woodland part of the biome, resembling a temperate deciduous forest. Large populations of the ponderosa pine, western larch, and Douglas fir trees make up the overstory. The understory is made up of shrubs such as ocean spray and ninebark, as well as annual grasses. The soil is moist, with many decomposing materials creating a fertile humus. As the figure below displays, there is less than 20% UV penetration. The south aspect biome of Kamiak Butte is extremely different than the north. Whereas previously mentioned, the north aspect receives less than 20% sun exposure, the south, in most areas, receives 100%. This leads to an intense level of UV radiation, discouraging growth of many of the species found on the north aspect. Ponderosa pine are the only large tree species to be seen, scattered inconsistently on the hillside. A small number of Douglas fir can be found growing in the shade of the pine. The majority of the south aspect is made up of understory shrubs and annual grasses. Therefore, as you can see in the figure below, the south displays the shrub steppe aspect of the WISSW. The WISSW biome is a fascinating biome to study, and the north and south aspects of Kamiak Butte are a wonderful observance of the differences within this biome. Examining interactions is one of the most important parts of ecology. A population is the baseline of the ecological hierarchy. It is made of individuals of the same species interacting with one another. When populations interact with one another, that becomes a community of populations. Next is the conglomerate of communities and the environment they live in, which is known as an ecosystem. Landscapes include multiple ecosystems and are spatially heterogeneous environmental features. Next is the biome. A biome is a general, separated by region, arrangement of ecosystems and landscapes. Climate and biota are distinctive for each biome and are adapted to the environmental conditions of the biome. The largest aspect of the ecological hierarchy is the biosphere, which essentially is the planet and all of the biomes that make it up. On September 25, 2019, the Washington State University School of the Environment took a group of students to Kamiak Butte on an ecological field study. The focus of the field study was to examine the north and south aspects of Kamiak Butte and understand what specifically makes them unique from one another, ecologically. For the field study, students were divided into small groups and given a packet of tables for which to examine the area. First, the overstory species were identified, as well as their number per acre, distribution, canopy cover, and if there were signs of regeneration. Second, the same was completed for the understory. Next, students were to ask the professor, Dr. William Schlosser, to use his GPS device to record the elevation and coordinates of each area plot. A compass was used to determine the slope by turning the compass sideways and identifying the angle. Position on the slope was approximated, as well as UV exposure. Soil properties such as moisture, depth, texture, and color were qualitatively analyzed. All of this data was recorded the same way for both the north and south aspect of Kamiak Butte and compared. The north aspect plot area was approximately 150 square meters. The south-facing aspect was approximately 865 square meters. The north aspect was at coordinates north 46 degrees, 52.150 minutes, west 117 degrees, 9.093 minutes. The south aspect was at north 46 degrees, 52.039 minutes, west 117 degrees, 9.077 minutes. Kamiak Butte's north and south aspect are ecologically different from one another, despite being geographically next to each other and setting in the same biome. The contribution to these differences, as highlighted in the tables, comes in many different forms. It is important to consider all factors when comparing the north and south aspect. The soils play a large role in the microclimates. The darker, moister soil of the north enables more growth than the dry soil on the south. The increased plant life on the north enables more decomposing materials to enter the soil, decomposing and creating fertile humus. The south soil has none of this, however, and is less suitable to the amount of life of the north. The two aspects have very different plant forms because of the soil. One can observe this in a side-by-side comparison of the two aspects. There are many microclimates influenced by the different vegetations. These microclimates are mostly altered by the different shade and sun penetration levels created by different growth forms. The south has a clear view of the sky, while it is barely visible on the north. The microclimates are extremely influenced by the different canopy levels and the moisture, temperature, and light levels that they alter. The last part of this video is a student-selected topic. I chose to research the relationship between Kamiak Butte and gray wolves. We start with some background information. The gray wolf, Canis lupus, is a canid species native to the state of Washington. However, in the 20th century, the gray wolf was on the brink of extinction in the lower 48 states. By mid-century, all states except for Alaska, Minnesota, and Michigan had eradicated wolves entirely. This was due to predator control programs, habitat loss, agriculture, and loss of prey for the wolves to hunt. Humans thought they had removed a threat to society and agriculture. They couldn't have been more wrong. The gray wolf is a keystone species everywhere they live. Keystone species is a term coined by Robert Payne in 1966, which describes a species that exerts a top-down influence on lower trophic levels, as well as preventing lower species from monopolizing critical resources. The removal of a keystone species results in a loss of resources, species, and habitat, as can be viewed in the graph. One can observe in this graph that after the removal of the deemed keystone species, the number of other species decreased from 15 to 8. This ecosystem lost almost half of the species living in it just from the removal of the keystone species. Removal of wolves from the lower 48 states had a similar effect on those respective environments. In Yellowstone National Park, for example, it is estimated over 136 wolves were killed between 1914 and 1926. This led to an elimination from a consistent wolf presence in the park. The years following, the elimination brought a decrease in biodiversity, species number, stream and river health, and a boom in the prey populations such as deer and elk. The increase in deer and elk population, as well as less fear during feeding and sleeping, led to degradation of streamside foliage and reduction of aspen and cottonwood trees that were reaching maturity. When wolves were released back into Yellowstone, the results, as depicted in the other figure, were astounding. As wolves were reintroduced and their populations increased, the elk population decreased accordingly to a more sustainable number. As the elk population decreased, the number of cottonwoods over 5 centimeters skyrocketed. Aspen heights more than quadrupled. Beaver colonies expanded exponentially, and the bison population increased as well. Another positive result from the reintroduction was the increase in grizzly bear populations and overall health. Grizzly bears are known to wait until wolves have made a kill, then shooing the wolves off so the bear can eat the kill. The increase in carcasses from wolf kills is the probable cause of the increase of grizzly bears. In the early 1900s, trappings, poisonings, and government-sponsored bounty huntings eradicated wolves from Washington. The last confirmed wolf was killed on the Olympic Peninsula in 1930. However, in the 1990s, wolves were observed immigrating into northeast Washington from British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. Currently, there are now multiple established wolf packs in the state with a consistently growing population. The figure shows that there is now a confirmed wolf pack on the west side of the state as well, in Skagit County. This is major progress for the gray wolf's westward expansion in Washington state. With an increase in wolf movements towards the west side of the state, an increase in legislation and discussion surrounding them will follow. Two major ways for people to travel from the east side of Washington to the west side by car are driving I-90 or Highway 2. I-90 runs directly over Snoqualmie Pass and Highway 2 runs over Stevens Pass. The surrounding landscapes adjacent to these roadways is perfect wolf habitat. Between the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest, the Alpine Lakes Wilderness, the Henry M. Jackson Wilderness, and more, the wolves have many reasons to be interested in immigrating. In fact, wolves are interested in moving to these areas, proven by 2 sightings in 2015. A wolf was killed on I-90 around the North Bend area. Not much is known besides the fact that the wolf was hit by the car in April 2015. The wolf was female and had been previously suffered a non-fatal shot to the leg. The second incident was a sighting on a trail camera between Leavenworth and Stevens Pass. This was the photo taken. So where does Kamiak Butte fit into the Washington State wolf picture? As mentioned before, Kamiak Butte's landscape was greatly impacted by the mass agriculture in the surrounding fields. Before the land was anthropogenically influenced, the Palouse would have wolves frequently observed. Today, there are less frequent wolf sightings, but we know they are still present. A wolf was shot 15 miles outside of Pullman. The wolf was shot unprovoked, most likely scouting the area or hunting in the wheat fields. I personally ran into 2 wolves outside of Troy, Idaho while fly fishing. I have encountered deer, elk, and moose in the same location, so the wolves were most likely there to hunt. These wolf sightings make it likely that the wolves still pass through Kamiak Butte. On our class trip to Kamiak Butte, I encountered signs that wolves are not a constant presence. In the figure, shrubs are seen on the south aspect of Kamiak Butte that are relatively small and chewed on, as well as tree starts that are not growing to a mature height. These are possible effects of an inconsistent wolf presence in the area. First, as one can observe, the landscape is open and unprotected grazing land. With the consistent wolf presence, I would hypothesize the shrubs and tree starts would be eaten more frequently in safe areas around the few ponderosa pines and Douglas fir trees, while the shrubs and tree starts in the wide open areas would have less signs of grazing and more trees would grow into maturity. In conclusion, the gray wolf is an important keystone species in the state of Washington. As observed in Yellowstone National Park, their reintroduction increased biodiversities and species numbers, which can also be observed in the state of Washington. Wolf population and pack numbers are steadily increasing in number and geographical range. On the west side of the state, it is only a matter of time before more wolves make their way over. Wolves may come over I-90, Highway 2, through the North Cascades, as has already been done, or other ways. It is exciting to think about the future of wolves in the state of Washington. It is possible one day we will see a more consistent presence of wolves at Kamiak Butte. Kamiak Butte shows signs similar to Yellowstone National Park when there were little to no wolves in the park. An increase in wolf presence on the butte could potentially increase the number of trees on the south aspect reaching maturity. There is no future in Washington state that does not include wolves. Thank you for watching. If you are interested in where I got my information from, here are my references.